Chargers. Touchdown, UCLA.
With USC great and NFL stud, Frosty Rucker.
The Trojans back in front.
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
What's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome into the LA Football Show right here on the LA Football Network on a beautiful Friday on your drive home for the weekend. We are on AM the Mightier 1090. Thanks for making us a part of your drive, part of your commute, part of your day. I'm your host, Ryan Dyrud. Always can find us also on the Believe Podcast Network. Got a great show for you today. A huge weekend of football. Week 18, the first regular season week 18 we have seen in the NFL, and yet it feels like the playoffs. It feels like the playoffs have already started because of how important our LA games are. Rams host the Niners. Rams are in the playoffs, but this is almost a must-win game because if you can't beat the Niners yet again for the sixth time in a row, says something about you going into the playoffs. Now, some teams just have teams' numbers. Shanahan and the Niners seem to have that with the Rams, but this is a big game for Sean McVay, for Matthew Stafford to prove their worth as they go into the playoffs. You want to go into the playoffs with the momentum, with the fire, with the passion of a big win against a division rival, knocking the Niners out of the playoffs, as opposed to falling in after another bad loss to the team up north. I talk all about this with my guy Jesse on our last episode. You can find it at the LA Football Network, LAFB Network, YouTube. It is on there. And we have a full hour conversation previewing that game. So for any Rams fans out there listening, go ahead and hop over to those channels to check out that preview. Today, we're getting into this Chargers-Raiders game because this game is, for all intents and purposes, a playoff game. Win and you're in. Win, you're in. I know there's been scenarios out there that potentially these two teams can tie and both get in. That's not happening. Not happening. Win and you're in. Losers out, probably. I've looked at all the different scenarios. There's some crazy ones. Essentially, win you're in, lose you're out. So for our Chargers, who already beat the Raiders once this year, jumped out to a 21-0 lead in that first half, and then held on at the end for a big win. Back when the Raiders were one of the hottest teams in football. I mean, their offense was being compared to the 2013 Broncos and the 2007 Patriots. That's how good the offense and Derek Carr were performing. Now they're a little different. Offense is a lot less firepower, more run heavy, and the defense has stepped up. So we're going to get all in that game. I'm going to be joined by a phenomenal guest here in just a minute. Voice of radio, world famous JT the Brick, host of Mad Dog Radio out in Vegas, covering the Raiders, is jumping on with me right here on AM 1090. And following that, I'll have my guy, Stephen Haglund. He's a contributor for the LA Football Network, also co-host of the Guilty as Charged podcast, to give us more of the Chargers perspective after we talk Raiders perspective in this huge tilt. The battle for SoCal, the battle for the playoffs. Beautiful game, beautiful rivalry. Can't wait. Thank you all for tuning in. Brought to you today by our friends at TickPick. It's the #1 ticketing agency. They've partnered with us. 0 fees when you buy tickets through them. TickPick.com/LAFB. Going to get you 0 fees. The price you see is the price you get. If you want to go to that Charger Raider game out in Vegas, head to TickPick.com/LAFB. If you want to go to this Rams Niners game right here at SoFi, hopefully Rams fans, we got to pack this place with blue. TickPick, that's TickPick.com/LAFB. Link will be in the description below. But without further ado, let's get on into it. JT the Brick. All right, joining me now on the LA Football Show right here on the LA Football Network and AM the Mightier 1090, covering the Raiders, for Mad Dog Sports Radio. He is the famous JT the Brick. Thank you so much for taking the time. How you doing, JT?
Ryan, I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. Excited. Big game. Flex to Sunday night. It can't get much better in Vegas than this weekend.
Huge game in Vegas. The entertainment capital of the world. People debate LA, Vegas. I'm sure you would say Vegas. We would say LA out here. But everyone knows Sin City and what's been going on down there with the Raiders and Allegiant Stadium. And, It's going to be a lot of fun. A huge game. Playoff start week 18, just like they did last year. This year just has to be regular season, but it's a playoff game with the play-in. So, JT, before we really get into the game, though, you've been in Vegas the whole time. How's the fan response been to the Raiders being in Vegas? I know when the Golden Knights got there was a huge love for having a pro sports team. So what's it just been like having a pro football team on the Strip?
It's been spectacular. I mean, it's great for Raider fans, and it's a global hub now for international Raider fans to come to Vegas. And as I've said 1,000 times, no one ever wanted to leave Oakland. That was never the plan. They ended up leaving. It was going to be Carson, then back to Oakland, and then they hit a home run with Vegas. And it's been fantastic. Year one, no fans in the building. Year two now, every ticket's been sold. There's no tickets available unless you're on the secondary media market. That's why some opposing fans have been able to get in, because they're buying tickets at any price you can put it at to get in there to see their teams. So there's been a nice turnout from opposing fans. It's a dominant Raider crowd here, and this should be the biggest Raider home game crowd of the year, because it's the most important game. So we welcome everybody out here. It's a tourist destination, and a lot of fans want to see their teams play in Vegas, obviously.
100%. I mean, we see the same thing in LA every single week. I know it's a different storyline, different narrative nationally, but we know those that live here, it's like we get those opposing fans because it's Los Angeles. People want to come and see 65-degree weather in December and January, as opposed to being in Buffalo where it's snowing and negative. So Vegas also a destination. You're going to get those fans. Crazy prices. I mean, I'm looking at TickPick, one of our partners. I mean, this game is going for like $300. So good for you guys. You guys are getting that economy coming in, and the hotels are filling up. Have you seen on winter weekends, has it been busier than normal because of the Raiders been there? Or is it's Vegas? It's always busy. You can't really tell.
It's Vegas. It's always packed. We just had the rodeo, which is one of the biggest events out here. The rodeo does massive numbers, and Vegas is historically, a little bit slow in between Christmas and New Year's. But that really isn't the case anymore, because Resorts World opened up. That's a $4+ billion property that just opened up. Circa opened up last year. Allegiant Stadium is open. The Sphere, which is owned by MSG, is opening next year. So there's always something new happening in Vegas. But with the Golden Knights, who played last night and beat the Rangers, that's a big sellout. And the Raiders are doing great, because now that the Raiders are here, we got the Pro Bowl, we get the Super Bowl, we have the NFL draft, we're getting European soccer, international soccer, and we've gotten the biggest concerts in the world. We didn't have the ability without a football stadium to do Garth Brooks, the Rolling Stones, Guns N' Roses. We got Billy Joel and Metallica coming up at Allegiant Stadium. And the only thing I'll say is different, because I haven't been to SoFi yet, but I've seen enough of it, is SoFi is bigger. It's a little bit more generic. This is the Raiders stadium. It's silver and black. It's all Raiders. It's about the Raiders, even if you're not at a Raider game. So we're really excited that the stadium came in on budget. Everybody seems to love it. And we're kicked off the season with Monday Night Football beating the Ravens. Opportunity to close the season on Sunday Night Football if the Raiders can beat the Chargers.
Yeah, it's crazy that the entertainment capital of the world can just get busier with more events, more sports, more entertainment. Have you been to that new, what is it called, like Stadium Swim? Is it as cool as it looks?
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, Derek Stevens had a vision to build one of the greatest sportsbook properties in the world. At Circa, Circa's got a great steakhouse called Barry's, worth plugging. If you're in Vegas, you got to go to Barry's Steakhouse at Circa. And then you go outside, Stadium Swim, especially in the summer times, remarkable with cabanas and live wagering and giant video scoreboard for gambling. And then inside, they have a great sports book. So that's been fantastic.
Yeah, that's great. Definitely on my list to get out there soon, hopefully this summer or next season for sure. So JT, looking at this Raiders team, I mean, man, so much turmoil surrounding them. And I've said many times, I'm impressed. They've even, in my opinion, you cover them obviously much more closely, so you can dig into how they've actually performed. But just from the outside, I've been impressed they've gotten the 9 wins just with what's gone on with Gruden, with Ruggs, with now Nate Hobbs happening. Obviously, they haven't played yet. This will be this weekend, first time without him in the lineup. But what can you say, positive or negative, about the resolve of this team with everything that's gone on, with fans the first time in a new city, in a new building, essentially, because fans are there finally? Just what's the resolve of this team in 2021?
Well, it's been great. I think they proved that, that they're resilient. They're tremendously resilient. John Gruden and the resignation was the first big deal that hit this team. And this team had to react to, excuse me, an interim head coach, and they were able to do that. And then they hit a bump in the road after the Cowboy win, and everybody thought the wheels were coming off. And the Henry Ruggs fatality accident that killed Tina Tintor, big story out here. I always mention her name because her name needs to be brought up every time we mention Ruggs. And a lot of the national media and a lot of people thought that was it. After that, the Raiders would go into the tank and be done, and they didn't. And now they're winning differently. They're winning these ugly, low-scoring games. They're running the ball well. Their defense and their defensive line is saving them in a lot of these games. And Derek Carr is not making the plays he made earlier in the season, the volume of the plays, but he's making bigger plays. So that's what I like coming into this game. He's making bigger plays in crunch time that's been winning games against Indianapolis, Cleveland, Dallas in overtime. And that's what the Raiders have been about. You know, a lot of people have said that the Raiders, and I always hear this word dysfunctional. I'm in the building 3 days a week. They're not dysfunctional. They got a brand new building, brand new stadium. They're top 5 in revenue. A lot of teams would love to have the revenue stream that the Raiders are going to have and what they have going forward. But, you know, this year, the league, I won't say the league, I'll say more the Washington football team with the release of those emails that were leaked.
Yeah.
That was very unfair to the Raider organization because no need to defend, nor would I, John Gruden's emails and what he said. But the fact that they were released when they could have been released before the season, and the Raiders could have gotten a head coach at that time. Rich Bisaccia came in after that and really got the team to buy in to what he wants to do, which is delegate the offense to Greg Olsen, the defense to Gus Bradley. He's got a bunch of former head coaches, Rod Marinelli on the defensive line. We mentioned Gus Bradley, Tom Cable, and now Rich Bisaccia is a head coach. If you look at all these names in that building, they got a lot of experience and they were able to keep the team together.
Yeah. My good buddy, Frosty Rucker, who co-hosts the show with me every now and then, but he's in the building every week too. So he says the same thing out there in Vegas. And, you know, I was going to lead into something else, but you've already mentioned Bisaccia, so let's get into him. Again, done a tremendous job going from the special teams to delegating, being the head coach there. And I know there's a lot of talk right now about Jim Harbaugh, and this is more important this week, this game, which we'll get into, but at least want to get it out there since you brought it up. Is there a real chance Bisaccia is retained and can remain this head coach? Or do you think they need to get that big splash name over here in Vegas?
Yeah, I'm in a tough situation there because I host the Rich Bisaccia show. I host his interview every week. So I take the high road on that. I hope he has an opportunity to retain his job, because he's done a really good job. The Raiders have taken a bunch of big swings with head coaches. That's why Jack Del Rio was let go initially, not because he didn't do a good job, is that Mark Davis was waiting the entire time to bring in Gruden when he had the opportunity, and he finally got it. So we'll wait and see to comment on that after the season and what happens here. But, you know, the strength of the Raiders right now is coaching. They have competent men in that building who are doing an incredible job. I think the bigger question will be, what did the Raiders do in the draft coming up next? Because a lot of the draft picks haven't worked out, but a lot of the free agents have. You know, Max Crosby's a draft pick that worked out well. But you being in LA, you know, Denzel Perryman had an unbelievable year, Pro Bowler. Yannick Ngakoue comes in as a free agent. He's been amazing. Everyone from Desmond Trufant, who stepped up the last couple of weeks, and the guys that they have, KJ Wright, Solomon Thomas, Darius Philon, the players that they brought, and Casey Hayward. Casey Hayward had an outstanding year. So the strength of the Raiders have been the depth and the people that they bring in trades and free agency, because they struggled with a couple of their high-profile draft picks that haven't panned out. Hunter Renfrow has, right? Yeah. Hunter Renfrow's turned out to be a great pick overall. So they're trying to figure out how to handle this roster going forward. And then the big question will be Derek Carr. You know, do the Raiders retain Derek Carr? He has one more year left on his contract, but they already paid him. So he's gotten all the money there. And I think that Derek's proven that he deserves to be here if he continues to play at this level. But this is a big game for him.
Yeah, huge game for the trajectory of his career and with the Raiders. You mentioned some of those names, and I love the Chargers-Raiders rivalry just in general. It's a great rivalry dating, you know, Al Davis going back to the Sid Gilman days with the Chargers. So, but it's funny now because among Charger fans, there's a lot of talk and chatter and smack about how many former Chargers are on this Raiders team, and they're actually performing very well. You mentioned Perryman, you mentioned Casey Hayward, Braden Faison is a depth piece who's been playing well for you guys, and obviously your defensive coordinator in Gus Bradley. What's the sentiment on Gus Bradley and what he's done with that defense? Because I'll be honest, it's probably a very distant sentiment to what Charger fans think, who, again, Gus Bradley, I think, started off his tenure with Los Angeles pretty good under Anthony Lynn, ended very differently. So what's it been like so far with the Raiders and turning that defense around?
Everybody's pretty excited about it. He's lined up the players better. You know, they had Paul Gunther, who was a really good defensive coordinator when he came over from Cincinnati. And the problem was, not only did Gunther not have the players that Gus has, but they weren't lined up correctly at times. You could just see that the Raiders were confused on defense a little bit more than they are now under Gus Bradley. So we all know Gus's history as a head coach in Jacksonville and one of the architects of the Legion of Boom in Seattle and the success that he's had. But now what I like about him is he's getting the most out of the defensive line with Rod Marinelli. He's getting the most out of these linebackers finally, because Corey Littleton hasn't played well. Nick Kwiatkowski, they brought in. He hadn't played at a high level. But now they have guys who can play. And Perryman has been the anchor to that, and he really communicates well with Gus, calling the defense. Gus is what he is. We know what he is. He's going to line up that cover three. He's going to have that deep zone. He's going to have players not blitzing. He's going to really rely on the defensive line to get to the quarterback without blitzing. And he's done fine. I mean, look at the scores, Ryan, in the last couple of games and how the Raiders have won, right? Even though they played Nick Mullins, Carson Wentz, the defense is winning games. They're winning games. Yeah, Drew Lock. Now they play Justin Herbert. So the problem in this game, I believe, is that Herbert is great at picking apart a zone. Number one, he's great at it. He's not good at it. And the second thing is that the Raiders don't blitz a lot. And Herbert's really good if you don't blitz him. So what I think is interesting, and I've said this last year, and this might be interesting to your audience. Last year, when there were no fans, I saw something that no one in broadcasting has ever seen, and other than Brent Musburger, who's on the call, Lincoln Kennedy on the play-by-play, and Eric Allen, the former Pro Bowl legendary defensive back. We were in the building when no one was there. No concessions, no beer, nobody. I mean, it was empty. And we're in there on the broadcast. And last year, if you remember, the Raiders opened up the season with Drew Brees, Hall of Famer, one of the Mount Rushmore players. The other quarterbacks who played in Allegiant Stadium last year, and it'll never happen again ever in the history of football. Brees, Phillip Rivers, both retired. Tom Brady, the GOAT. Patrick Mahomes, the new GOAT. Josh Allen of the Buffalo Bills. Justin Herbert, Derek Carr, Marcus Mariota, Ryan Fitzpatrick, and Tua Tagovailoa. So those are the quarterbacks that I saw play live in Allegiant Stadium without one fan there. And the best of all of those, everybody asked me, JT, who was the best? And the obvious answer would be Tom Brady. No. Tom Brady combined for 5 touchdowns in the game he played. It was Herbert. Herbert, with my own eyes, was the best quarterback I saw last year. And there were 3 Hall of Famers in Rivers, Brady, and Brees who were in that building. Herbert just blew me away with his footwork side to side, climbing the pocket, arm strength. He threw a ball in overtime to end up winning the game. The Raiders had 1st and goal at the 4 with Mariota. Would you like that back if you're a Raider fan? 1st and goal at the 4 to win the game. To win the game and go to the playoffs, and they go 3 and out and kick. They give the ball back to Herbert, marches down the field, wins the game. So I have a lot of respect for Herbert. He's one of the greatest young quarterbacks I've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, that is huge praise coming from you. And I know our audience will love hearing that. And that's going to be a great soundbite. So thank you for that. And you mentioned him and just looking at this game and this matchup, and, you know, Max Crosby's going to have a big game. I think you mentioned the lack of blitzing, or just that's not what the Raiders do. I think I saw, you know, on average, they blitz like 12% of the time, but against the Chargers the first time, they almost doubled that at like 23%. So they did blitz a little bit more in that first meeting. Is that something you think they need to do to stop Herbert, or do they need to play more man? Like, I guess in your opinion, how do you slow Herbert down? Or do you think this is just going to be a shootout and we're going to see first team to 35 wins maybe?
It's a great question. That's all I've been talking about on Raider Nation Radio all week. I mean, I'm fascinated by that. And on my Twitter feed at JT the Brick, I tweeted that out this morning because let me find the exact tweet because I think it's an important one on scoring. I said the Raiders have scored over 30 points just 5 times this year. That's it. and they were all victories. They beat the Ravens, Miami, at Denver, Eagles, and at Dallas. All scored over 30. I think they need to score 30 plus to beat the Chargers. I do.
Mm-hmm.
And the way they're playing right now, I don't see how they can score 30. They're just not explosive. They're not playing that way. The running game struggled all year long, but finally it's playing well. That's the strength of the team now. Josh Jacobs' career high is 129 yards, and he's coming off a great game. So I think the Raiders are going to want to run it. And they're going to want to run it, and then on third down, set up third and short, because the Chargers, which is mind-blowing, are dead last in the NFL at 49.5%, rounded up to 50% of the time they give up a first down on third down. How is that bleeping possible, right? So if the Raiders run it on first and second down, they can bring in Mariota on 3rd and 2. And Mariota, you're going to see a lot of Mariota. He can run it. Or Derek can find Waller or Renfro. The problem with that philosophy is the Raiders don't go for first downs enough on first down or second down. They wait for third down. And when you've been doing this a while, on third down, a deflected ball, a drop, anything can happen and you're off the field. And then you give the ball back to Justin Herbert. So this game, to me, a lot of Raider fans are saying, we're going to run it. Chargers give up 136 yards a game. I'm saying the opposite. Embrace the shootout, because we've seen what Mahomes can do to the Raiders. He's destroyed the Raiders. I mean, obliterates the Raiders most of the time. The Raiders have to get into this game like they're playing Herbert as Mahomes, and the Chargers are going to score 30. That's how I see it.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I mean, you're a smart guy. It's one of those, and you saw the Raiders when they played the Broncos there. I can't remember the percentage, but I feel like they were converting every third down. I mean, they were just running the ball down the field, methodical, kept it low scoring, just kept the ball out of the Broncos' hands. But I don't see that as the game plan for this Chargers against this Chargers team. And it's what they'll, and I've said too before this week, I think in order for the Chargers to win, they need to be able to, establish the run, but also they need to air it out too with Herbert and really embrace the shootout too. I said the same thing. I think this is going to be an old school AFC West shootout where we see these teams getting 30 plus points, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
Well, you mentioned that. And again, if the Chargers, and I broke down the Chargers all week, and I got notes here in front of me for my show, and the Chargers would be nuts not to throw. I mean, nuts not to throw the ball all the time. They're going up against a Raider defense where he knows how to exploit this defense. Now, the Raiders have Trayvon Merrick, a really good young safety. I mentioned Casey Hayward. They got players that can defend. But if Herbert has any time, just a half a second to let Keenan Allen and Mike Williams get a little bit deeper. See, I'm just hoping that, Herbert tries to throw underneath, because if he wants to throw daisy cutter bombs all day, the only shot the Raiders have is in Ngakoue and Crosby getting home. Yeah. Because it takes a long time, as you know, to develop that route. Keenan Allen and Mike Williams are great players. They are not speed burners. They're decently fast, but they're not guys that, like Deshaun Jackson or, the speed guys, Jamar Chase, that can run right by you. So I think it's important that the Raiders, they're going to play that conservative cover 3, that conservative zone over the top, the 2 high safeties. And I hope that Herbert doesn't throw over the top on them all day long, because that's what I would do if I was Staley. And also another really important point, which I know you're talking about, is anytime the Chargers get to their own 45, close to midfield, I think they're going to go for it on 4th down, because the playoffs are on the line. Oh, yeah. So that's 4 down territory. So the Raiders are going to have to defend 4 downs, not 3 downs and a punt. Yeah. And that could break the Raiders back if they're not careful.
Yeah, especially if they're giving up all that underneath stuff. And then you know, eventually in the NFL, someone's going to bite, and then that opens that over the top pass, which we've seen so often Herbert do in these games.
Or the high point pass. The high point pass to Keenan Allen and Mike Williams is really what haunts every Raider fan. They know that, Justin Herbert isn't afraid to throw the 50-50 ball. And I'm not going to use the word afraid for Derek Carr, but a really big issue I have with Derek, because he's so good and accurate, is he doesn't like to throw 50-50 balls. Derek does not like to throw into double coverage, and he doesn't like to throw balls that are, could be intercepted. Yeah. And that's unfortunate, because Darren Waller is Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Darren Waller is a guy that you can just throw fades to him all day long. And if he doesn't catch it, no one's going to catch it. right? He's a basketball player. You just throw a high ball to him. And if he can't catch it, he can knock it away. Renfro's different because Derek will throw low darts to him. I mean, Derek will throw a ball that's 4 feet off the ground or 1 foot off the ground, and Renfro will go get it. Watch Renfro in this game because the Charger fan should know third down is third and Renfro. That's what we call it out here, third and Renfro, and he's got to have another big game.
Oh, yeah. Us LA fans in general know because we got Cooper Kupp with the Rams and similar. Any third down you get, that's who converts. So last question for you, JT, and I'll get you out of here maybe with the prediction. Really appreciate the time talking to JT the Brick of Mad Dog Sports Radio. In that first matchup, we talked about all the over-the-top stuff. We talked about, get up the middle of the field and stuff. But really what the Chargers offense had going was the tight ends. I think Jared Cook and Donald Parham had phenomenal games. Donald Parham on IR, unfortunately, with that kind of scary injury he sustained against the Chiefs. But Jared Cook is back now off the COVID list. So since that game, for those that haven't watched the Raiders a lot, how has the Raiders defense, linebackers, or safeties, if they come down, defended the tight end position? Has that improved? Is that still a concern? Do you see that being an issue in this game, or is it more we just talked about?
No, that's a good question. Again, the Raiders linebackers aren't great in pass coverage. They're not. They're just not great in pass coverage. KJ Wright's a real experienced player. I mean, talking borderline Hall of Famer. Bobby Wagner's going in. KJ Wright had a hell of a career in Seattle. And I think KJ's their leader this week. He's given a lot of speeches, and he's been big in the media, and maybe he'll surprise us. As you know, Denzel Perryman is not great against the pass. He's not. He gave up a big catch to Cook in the last game. It was Cook just made this incredible catch, and Perryman had his back to the ball and just, I don't know how he caught it.
Yeah.
So that's not
fourth down, I think.
Yeah. That's not something that the Raiders are embracing here. They want to, that's a problem. That's a problem, is the size of the Chargers receivers. Cook and Williams and Allen, the size matchup, it's just like a basketball game. It's like Duke playing another team and they got 3 trees in college and you're going, oh my God, how are we going to stop them underneath? And that's what I think is the big test in this game. But the fact that the Raiders defensive interior rush is so underrated. I mean, spend some time looking at Solomon Thomas, Darius Philon, Jonathan Hankins. The push they're getting up the middle is the key to this game, because the interior push, it's kind of like with Tom Brady, and I make that comparison with Herbert. Brady never likes the interior push up the middle. He can step up from the guys coming off the edge. With Herbert, he's going to have to be conscious of Ngakoue and Mad Max coming off the edge. If that interior push isn't good, then Herbert will have a pocket. If the interior push is as good as it's been against Carson Wentz, Locke the last couple of games, and then Herbert, if he tries to step out to the right or to the left, he's going to run right into Ngakoue or Max Crosby. So as you're watching this game, just remember what I said on the pass rush. It's going to have to be obvious early in the game that the Raider pass rush showed up. It has to be obvious, because if not, Herbert's going to play pitch and catch all day. And at some point, Ryan, in this game, Rich Bisaccia is going to have to look at Derek Carr and go, crap, we're in a shootout. Now you got to get going. No more taking 35 seconds off the clock. No more winding the clock down to 1 second on the clock. No handoffs on 2nd and 9. We only can win this game with you catching up to Justin Herbert. And that's the only concern I have in this game. If the Raiders play with the lead, establish the run, dink and dunk on third down, they'll win the game. But if the Raiders are in trouble early, like the last game against the Chargers, they were buried at halftime, blown out.
Yeah.
Then they came back in the second half and looked pretty good, but they were too far down. They've got to manage the score till halftime, because once they get into halftime, they've proved to their opponents that their coaches are better, right? That's obvious. I mean, you can go back to Mike McCarthy. You can go back to Kevin Stefanski, Frank Reich. You can go back to John Harbaugh. You can go to Mike Tomlin in week 2. This Raider coaching staff is ready to make the adjustments. I believe they're a better staff than what Staley has right now. But Staley's a riverboat gambler. And believe me, Staley's going into this game saying, if I'm going into the offseason losing, I'm losing on 4th down. I'm losing on my terms. And that should concern the Raider Nation.
Yeah, 100%. Great analysis. Great insight there. Obviously, Rashawn Slater's been fantastic this year for the Chargers, but the obvious weak link is Storm Norton on the right side. So, Mad Max can have a big game. It's going to be big on Joe Lombardi on what he does to try to alleviate that pass rush. And if he adds a chipper or what they do, or just slide Herbert different ways, because everything you said is very concerning about how quickly they can get home if they don't do things right. So,
and I'll leave you on one note because I know you cover all of LA, the Rams. This Rams 49er game is massive. Massive. Because if the Rams can't beat the 49ers with Jimmy Garoppolo not practicing or Trey Lance at home of the Super Bowl at SoFi, if they can't win this game, there's zero chance Stafford's going to win in Green Bay. He can't win there. Look at his record with Detroit. He'll get buried there. So they have a chance to knock the Niners out of the playoffs, which a lot of Raider fans would like to see. And the Raiders can knock the Chargers out of the playoffs. So you want to talk about Northern California, Southern California. You could see the Rams put away the Niners. You could see the Chargers put away the Raiders, or the Raiders put away Southern California's Chargers. And if the Rams beat LA, you might as well have a funeral in LA, because if you can't beat those guys at home, you're not going anywhere and you're not coming home for the Super Bowl. So there's a lot happening out west as we get ready for this weekend.
Oh, JT, it's huge. It's huge weekend in LA and Vegas, and just 4 hours down the freeway. So, man, I appreciate the time. So awesome to meet you and have you on, and great stuff, and keep up the great work. Love your show and all the stuff you do for coverage out there in Vegas. And hopefully we can link up soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Thanks to JT. What a guy, man. Awesome. You know, you can see why the guy does radio for a long time. Great voice there. Check out the JT the Brick Show. JT and Looney have a podcast. Looney, you might know him, does a lot of Fox Sports stuff. You know, real well known around the SoCal parts. So check that out. But now let's get into the Chargers side. My guy, Stephen Haglund. We already got a great preview with JT the Brick on the Raiders side. And now joining me to really dive more into the Chargers side of this game, our team, the Los Angeles Chargers. He writes for the LA Football Network. He hosts the Guilty as Charged podcast. Been on the show before. My good friend, Stephen Haglund, the baddest beard in the business. What's up, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing great. I always appreciate the beard compliments from my guy Ryan, but I'm happy to be here, talk some Chargers and Raiders, and you know, I can't believe the season's end is nigh, but man, couldn't be more excited for this Sunday's matchup between the Chargers and Raiders.
I know, crazy. It's like we added an extra week 18, which last year was playoffs. This year, week 18 is still playoffs, because this is a play and you're in game. But the season still flew by. Does anyone else, I'm just curious before we get going, does anyone else call you the baddest beard in the business, or no? No one else?
No, you're the only one. You know, I get people that will compliment my beard on like Twitter and stuff like that, or on our streams, you know, but you're the only one that introduces me like that. So I appreciate it.
We got to get that to stick. I had a guy by the name last episode. His name's Jesse. Helped me do the Rams Niners preview, and I swear to God, this guy looks just like Tim Tebow. So I've had him on twice now, and I call him that. And now on his stream today, he like sent me a screenshot. He had multiple people like, "You do look like Tim Tebow." So
I love it.
Yeah, we'll see if we get that to stick with you. But yeah, man, so huge game here, obviously. Playing you're in. Just get your perspective kind of this team. Let's just a little bit quickly, since we are at the end of the season now. It's been a roller coaster of a ride for sure for Chargers fans, for this Chargers team, for this coaching staff, for Justin Herbert as a quarterback. What's just your overall generic takeaway from this Chargers team heading into the final week?
Yeah, you know, heading into the season, I figured realistic expectations for this team, you know, were battling for a playoff spot, and obviously they have done that, right? You know, they've put themselves into position to have a win and in kind of game, and I think from a preseason standpoint, that's all we could have asked for. I think all of us would have been thrilled, you know, 3 months ago if we knew that this was going to be the outcome. And so, you know, this is a huge opportunity for Brandon Staley and Justin Herbert to you know, get in the playoffs for their first season together. And, you know, I think the offensive side of things has really exceeded expectations, at least, you know, that of my own. And I think of the calmer side of Chargers fans, but you know, obviously the defense side of things is a work in progress. I think we're going to see a bit of an overhauling on that side in the off season, but you know, you can't ask for more than this, man. You get a week 18 season finale chance to win, get in the playoffs, and really, you know, anything can happen in the playoffs. You never know who you're going to play. The seeding is still up for grabs. You never know at this point, like, who's going to have COVID, who's going to be injured. So you never know what happens once you get into the playoffs, how far you can go. You know, we've seen, not recently, obviously recently it's been more of the 1 seeds, but you know, like when I was in high school and college, you know, it was not super uncommon to have a 6 seed or a 5 seed make a run to a Super Bowl. So
Yeah.
this is really it's a huge week for the Chargers, and I could not be more excited for where they're headed in the future.
Yeah. New York Giants won 2 Super Bowls as a 6 seed.
Yeah.
So and one of those against arguably the greatest team of all time, the 20, whatever that was, 17 Patriots or whatever. Not 17.
2007.
7, 4,
Yeah.
I don't know. Either way.
Yeah, they went undefeated in 2007.
2007. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Put you on the spot here, but what, in your opinion, has been the biggest improvement for this Chargers team from the Anthony Lynn regime to now the Brandon Staley regime?
I just think like they're more prepared on a general basis, right? I think, the whole thing with Anthony Lynn and Gus Bradley is that they wanted to really simplify things and allow their players to play fast, not have to think. And that's good to an extent, right? Like if you have a really young team, like you don't want to make things overly complicated. But now you have a team that's been making adjustments throughout the season. Early in the season, the Chargers had a huge problem in scoring touchdowns in the red zone. Now on the season, they have the 7th highest touchdown percentage in the red zone in the league. So that's been an adjustment that they've made. They've really done a good job of getting Justin Herbert on the move more often. We've seen the development of Trey Pipkins and Storm Norton throughout the season, the offensive line, and how they've kind of improved that, so to speak. The run defense has improved throughout the season. So I think the two biggest things are just preparation and really player development. I think obviously they're not perfect in those regards, but I think, we're seeing this team week in and week out be more prepared, and we're seeing players who under the previous regime kind of looked like busts or kind of looked like backups really take extra leaps forward this year. And so I think those are the two areas that I would highlight as like the biggest areas of improvement under Brandon Staley.
Yeah, I think player development's been huge, and obviously there's some players that still are like some question marks there, and so
Yeah.
I know we've talked, and you've talked on your show, we've talked just on our own time about some interesting, like player rotations and whatnot that might not be to our liking. But I think overall, this coaching staff and Brandon Staley have done a really good job of putting players in a position to succeed, and with the amount of players that continually have been out this year. I've harped on it a lot. They haven't had like the big injury, like the season-ending injury, but it's been rare when they've had all 11 guys on each side of the ball healthy. So, being dealt with that and able to still be productive, competitive on the other side of one-score games this year, which they weren't last year, which has been nice.
Yeah.
And outside of that Houston game, haven't had abysmal letdowns. I know they've had some bad losses, but the Houston game was the one where it was like, wow, that was terrible. The rest were like, yeah, bad game, but they played a good team or something like that. So
right.
I think overall this has been a prepared team, which is what you hope for in that coach and what has exceeded expectations as a first-year head coach. So heading in now to this Vegas game, which you will be in attendance at, I believe, in Vegas, which is going to be great.
Yes.
We're trying hard to get a lot of the Bolt fam out to Vegas to show out. Has there been anything going around yet about a unified color that the Bolt fans are wearing? Have you heard yet?
I have
blue or something.
I've seen a couple people say like we should be wearing powder blue because it stands out more.
Yeah.
My personal favorite jersey is the white editions. I love the way that those look, but
yeah,
it's supposed to be a little crispy, a little chilly at night, so I'll probably just wear a powder blue hoodie, call it good. But definitely do not wear white. Definitely don't wear navy. Navy will kind of drown in with the black.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think one more powder blue, white, even the yellow stuff, I think you're probably good with those three.
Yeah. I think yellow and powder blue would be the best because even white, obviously the Raiders have white jerseys. So it would just be so cool to see that place have a lot of powder blue and yellow in there. I think that'd be finally maybe squash some narratives. It never will be fully squashed. That's what we have to deal with. But
I mean, I know a good amount of people going. Obviously, I don't think it's going to be like full scale takeover like the Chiefs game was there, or like even the Washington football team or the Bears team, Philly team. But I think there will be a good amount of us. I think, if we could get 30% of the stadium there, obviously if it weren't the end of the season and, they're honoring John Madden this week. So there's a little bit of extra juice there with just the overall circumstances. But I think we could probably end up with 30% of the stadium being Chargers fans, which would be huge.
Yeah, which would be awesome. Remember, if you need tickets, tickpick.com/LAFB, get that promo in. But
Nice.
I don't want you to tell people where you're staying because I don't want anyone creeping you. But are you on the strip or are you getting Airbnb or are you guys just going literally for the game and back?
No, so we're staying for a weekend. I'm going with my co-host Tyler. We're just staying at a Courtyard Marriott on the opposite side of the freeway, so we're not staying on the strip. But we'll be hanging out. We're going to wherever the Die Hard Bolt Club guys are on Saturday. We'll be there, and then we'll hit up the tailgate on Sunday morning too. So we're gonna make a whole weekend of it.
Love it.
But yeah, it's gonna be awesome.
Love it, man. Yeah, love to get out there, but it's crazy. We got the Rams playing the Niners the same day. It's like, and they're at home, so got to cover that game.
I was really surprised that the NFL didn't make that one of the Saturday primetime games.
I think a lot of people are,
because you have the Broncos and Chiefs, and like that's a meaningless game. Like, I mean, I know the Broncos have a lot of guys out too, so it's like the Chiefs should cruise to a win in that one. So I was pretty surprised that they didn't put the Rams and Niners in one of those slots.
I was real like that. I don't know if it's just want them to be fully healthy Rams and Niners and not have the shortened day, I guess. I don't know, but I agree. Sure. I mean, the Bronco Chiefs game is literally meaningless. I guess the Chiefs, win and can still play for that one seed, but the Broncos are playing for absolutely nothing and have a lot of guys out. So, but looking at this game, so, it's first matchup. Chargers jumped off to a big lead, 21-0. Raiders kind of came storming back a little bit, but the Chargers held on, finished the game as we've seen them do early in the year, and solidified themselves at the time. I think that put them first place in the NFC West, if I'm not mistaken.
It sure did.
Now we go, and the Raiders have had an interesting season too, very up and down. Looked like they were down and out. Now they've won 3 straight and have clung on to life and are in this play win and you're in scenario. So when you look at this Chargers team matching up versus the Raiders, what are the matchups you like? We'll stick with offense first and then go to defense. What are the offensive matchups that you expect the Chargers to be able to exploit on this Raiders? Gus Bradley, cover 3, half the team is Chargers defense.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting because in the first matchup, the Raiders were down a corner and then they lost a corner. So they were, essentially playing, Casey Hayward on one side, and I think it was Trayvon Mullen or somebody else on the other side. Now they have Brandon Faison, former Charger, who's starting opposite of him. In the first matchup, the Chargers didn't really go after the opposite corner. They went really after the linebackers and the safeties. A lot of Jared Cook in that one, a lot of Austin Eckler, out of the backfield. And so they could certainly do that again. The Chargers or the Raiders linebackers aren't exactly great in coverage, although I think Divine Diablo has kind of given them a little bit of a boost there. He's more of a rotational player, but you have Denzel Perryman, Corey Littleton, and KJ Wright, all of which are liabilities in coverage, in my opinion. So that dynamic is going to be interesting because I think that they could, go after really any of the quarters. I know Casey Hayward has had a fantastic year for them, but I feel like Keenan Allen and Mike Williams should be able to get the better of him, as well as Brandon Faison. But you do have a big time advantage over the middle with the Chargers tight end. I know Jared just got off the COVID list, but Steven Anderson and Trey McKitty have played really well. Austin Eckler has had a phenomenal season as a receiver and really just as a player in general. So that's something that I think is going to be interesting because from a offensive skill player versus Raiders defensive skill players, I think the Chargers have a big time edge. So really it's just a matter of who do they attack. Last time was the linebackers. Maybe this time we see a big Mike Williams game, which we haven't really seen for a while. But honestly, like from a Chargers offensive standpoint, really the only matchup I'm worried about is Max Crosby versus Storm Norton, because I feel really good about every other area from an offensive standpoint.
Yeah, I think that'll be the big one. Who Crosby, I think somewhere is like over 100 pressures on the season, or can be after this game, which is insane.
Yeah. He's got 90 on Pro Football Focus. I think True Media has him at like 93 or 4.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's crazy. Like I figured he would be better this year, but he's taken a full leap into somebody that I think is going to be one of the better pass rushers in the league for the next few years. So I did not see this coming. He deserves a ton of credit. Absolutely deserves that Pro Bowl nomination that he earned. But how the Chargers help Storm Norton out in this one, it really is the key on offense for me. Yeah,
that'll be important in how they help if it's on chips and stuff, or just on play calling, if it's running away from him, if it's quick passes outside, just getting him less involved, forcing him to split out wider, maybe depending how they do their splits. A lot of different kind of chess moves that Joe Lombardi and that offense can do. Looking at the defense, so I've seen a few people that have kind of looked at this Raiders defense who I think they've been better. I wouldn't call them great. They've been better than they were last year. Kind of that's what Gus Bradley does when he first comes in. You see improvement, and it kind of like people figure it out later down in his tenure. But I also think, you look at December and people will point to the scores and the how they've held offenses to like under 20-something points.
Yeah.
But, you're playing Drew Lock. You're playing a depleted kind of Colts Carson Wentz led offense and
Nick Mullins on the Browns.
And Mullins on the Browns. So it's like he hasn't exactly played Justin Herbert or a powerhouse offense, and the Chargers are a top 5 offense in the NFL. So I see this as I think it's going to be a high scoring affair, a shootout. When you look at the Raiders defense to what they've done and those things kind of comparing it, what do you see it as? Do you see the Raiders defense able to slow down, or just overall do you think it will be a shootout?
The Raiders defense definitely deserves credit for how they've improved. It really is going to be interesting going forward to see. Obviously, they have a ton up in the air in terms of like their head coaching decision and things like that. But if whoever they do decide to hire as head coach wants to keep Gus Bradley on, next year you have Casey Hayward, who's going to be, I think, 33, if I'm not mistaken. Denzel Perryman's going to be that much older. KJ Wright, Jonathan Abram hasn't really progressed as good as people would have hoped. Corey Littleton will be older. So they have improved, right? But they're far from a defensive juggernaut. It's just that Gus has brought some stability. He brought all his old friends back into the fold. And so like they've improved, but they're 24th in defensive DVOA. They're not exactly great in any of the defensive metrics. So it's better than last year for sure. And like I said, they deserve credit, but I'm not exactly like shaking in my boots looking at this Raiders defense again. Outside of Max Crosby, I think the Chargers have an advantage at, essentially across the board.
Yeah, I agree. And like I said, I think it's going to be a shootout. So looking at the Chargers defense, get everyone back. I mean, they had pretty much everyone back last game against the Broncos, but finally we'll see that secondary pretty much fully healthy. Derwin, Nas, Asante Samuel Jr., Chris Harris. I can list all down the line. Linebackers look to be pretty much intact. I think Drew Tranquil is still lingering, and we'll see if he's a game time decision or not. Defensive line, pretty much all full back. So finally, this defense, we may actually see all 11 stars on the field. How important is that, not only in this game, but potentially hopefully making a playoff push and getting to the playoffs, having an actual roster that we haven't seen all play together really much this year?
Oh, it's huge, man. In terms of the secondary, when Brandon Staley wants to go into his dime package, Alohi Gilman is that 6th defensive player, ideally that he likes to use. And, the 6 defensive members of the secondary, the 6 defensive backs have only played 4 games. This will be their 4th game together all season where all 4 are healthy, because Chris Harris got hurt in the first game. And then you had Michael Davis hurt. Asante Samuel Jr. had the 2 concussions. Derwin obviously got hurt. Alohi was hurt with his quad injury. So like you said earlier, they didn't ever really have like the season ending injury, but they've had little bits and pieces of minor injuries, and they all should be back in this one. Kyler Fackrell has a chance to play as well as the 3rd edge rusher. So it's been huge to have this team healthy. And I think you could tell on Sunday against the Broncos that the defense just had a different energy. And of course, some of that is because of the moment, because they had to win the game. But if you go back and watch that Houston game when all those players were out, there was just no energy, and it's inexcusable, but some of it is kind of justified based off of who was missing in that game. But the defense in the games where they have really made a concerted effort to show up and play with energy and rally to the football, they've played extremely well. It's just there have been games, like against the Giants, they didn't play all that great. Against the Texans, they didn't play all that great. Against the Chiefs, they obviously struggled. So it's huge. If the Chargers show up and play with energy like they did on Sunday, I think the defense should be relatively fine against the Raiders.
Yeah, energy is so important with this type of defense. Obviously, schematically and intelligence is huge, but energy and leadership is such a huge role that was just what was lacking in that bad Texans loss. So should be a great game. Steven, who you got? Who you liking this one? Chargers going to the ship or going to the playoffs? You say ship. We're not there yet. We got to get to the playoffs.
There yet.
Are they going to the playoffs?
Not there yet. I think so. Like I said, I think the offense, the offensive advantage for the Chargers is frankly pretty big in this one. As long as the Chargers can, limit the damage from Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller, who should be back, I think the defense will be fine. They had a couple turnovers in the first one. We know that Derek Carr is going to take some chances and give the secondary some opportunities to make plays. Obviously, Joey Bosa leads the league in strip sacks. So if the defense can get a turnover or two and, like I said, limit the damage, I think they'll be fine. So I expect this to be a close game, and then the Chargers pull away in the fourth. So I'm going to pick the Chargers 31-23.
There you go. That would be great for our LA Chargers. Stephen Haglund, co-host of the Guilty as Charged podcast, writer and managing editor for our LA Football Network. You can find him on Twitter at Stephen I. Haglund, my man, appreciate you as always. Have a blast in Vegas. Be safe. I'm going to have you put 20 on 14 black for me. See where we can ride that out. But thanks so much, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, of course, man. Happy to be here.
That's going to do it for the LA Football Show here on a Friday. Thank you all for tuning in. Huge weekend, as I've said many, many times. Can't wait to cover it all weekend long. Keep it right here on the LA Football Network for everything you need for your Los Angeles sports team. Go Rams, go Bolts. We'll talk to you guys Monday at 5. Hopefully both these teams get a big win. We're talking about playoff expectations at that point. Talk to you all then. Peace.